Sit back and enjoy an hour of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. There is a natural rock formation off the coast of Iceland that looks like a giant elephant. It is located in the Westman Islands, specifically on the island of Heimaey, and its appearance is due to volcanic and marine erosion over time. The texture of the rock, similar to the wrinkled skin of an elephant, along with a trunk-like shape extending toward the sea, has made it one of the most photographed natural curiosities in the country. The reason men have nipples is because all embryos begin as female in the womb, according to researchers. In the early stages of development, the basic structures of the body form before sex hormones define biological differences. Later, the action of hormones such as testosterone guides male development, but the nipples have already formed, so they remain without a significant biological function in most cases. Normally, you cannot smell your own home or perfume due to a survival instinct called olfactory adaptation. The brain is always looking for new, unusual, or changing smells as a signal of possible danger, so it ignores scents it has become familiar with. When Julius Caesar first encountered giraffes, he called them camelopards, since they reminded him of both camels and leopards. The name comes from the Latin camelopardalis, a combination of both words, and reflects how the Romans tried to describe unfamiliar animals by comparing them to more familiar ones. These exotic animals were brought to Rome as curiosities and were sometimes displayed in public spectacles. Pedestrians in Valero Square in Jerusalem can stop to rest under these giant inflatable flowers installed by HQ Architects in 2014, entitled Ward. These 30-foot by 30-foot flowers bloom when someone approaches or when a tram is about to arrive, brightening a part of the city that would otherwise feel dull. The naked mole rat is not only incapable of feeling pain, but it is also the only known thermoconforming mammal, is resistant to cancer, and has extraordinary longevity for a rodent. It lives in underground colonies with an organization similar to that of social insects, where a single female reproduces. In addition, it can survive in environments with very little oxygen, adapting its metabolism in a unique way that has sparked great interest in scientific research. If you are an American man over 7 feet tall and between 20 and 40 years old, there is a 17% chance that you currently play in the NBA. This is because there are very few people in the world with that height, which leads professional teams to actively recruit individuals that tall. In fact, height is one of the most determining factors in elite basketball, especially in positions such as center or power forward. At top speed, a cheetah spends more time in the air than in contact with the ground. During its run, it alternates between phases where none of its paws touch the ground, which allows it to extend each stride to the maximum. This technique, along with its extremely flexible spine and semi-retractable claws that improve traction, allows it to reach impressive speeds over short distances. Some restaurants in China have been discovered seasoning their food with substances derived from opium so that customers keep coming back. Isolated cases have come to light after police investigations, where illegal ingredients were detected in soups or broths. These practices are considered serious crimes and have been punished with fines and prison sentences, as they represent a serious risk to public health and food safety. Bruises change color because your body is breaking down and reabsorbing the hemoglobin that leaked from broken blood vessels in your body. As this substance degrades, it transforms into compounds such as biliverdin and bilirubin, producing shades that go from purple to green and then to yellow. This process is part of the natural healing of tissue, and the duration and colors can vary depending on the intensity of the impact and a person's circulation. There is a giant American wasp with a sting so painful that an academic journal advises anyone who is stung to lie down and scream to avoid further injury. This type of recommendation comes from descriptions in the Insect Sting Pain Index, where some species are rated as extremely painful. In those cases, the pain can be so intense that any sudden movement could cause accidents, so it is suggested to stay on the ground until the initial reaction subsides. One of the best vasectomy doctors in Austin is named Dick Chop. His name has become quite well known on the internet precisely because of how curious and fitting it is with his specialty, which has even contributed to his fame. Even so, beyond the striking name, his professional reputation is based on years of experience and the high demand for his services in his field. This is the Jorunna parva, a sea slug that looks exactly like a fluffy bunny. Despite its adorable appearance, it is a type of nudibranch, a group of marine mollusks known for their striking colors and unusual shapes. It lives in Pacific waters, especially near Japan, and uses small structures on its body called serrata to sense its surroundings, which contributes to its peculiar appearance that has made it popular on the internet. There is a 1966 Volvo P1800 with more than 3 million miles driven. The vehicle belonged to Irv Gordon, who drove it for decades while maintaining meticulous care and performing constant maintenance. His achievement was officially recognized by Guinness World Records, becoming one of the most impressive examples of durability in automotive history. A woman in Florida once spent 6 years sitting on a couch. In fact, she died during surgery after doctors attempted to remove her once her skin had fused to the fabric. The flag placed on the moon during the Apollo 11 moon landing was bought at a local Sears store for $5.50. It was chosen because it met the required size and materials, although it had to be modified with a horizontal rod so it would appear to wave in the absence of wind. After the landing, the flag was exposed to extreme conditions, including solar radiation and highly variable temperatures. There is a genetic condition called Laronde syndrome that results in short stature, a long life expectancy, and almost total immunity to cancer and diabetes, among other things. This condition is related to a disruption in the response to growth hormone, which reduces certain cellular processes associated with aging. Researchers have studied populations with this syndrome to better understand how these mechanisms could help in the development of treatments for metabolic diseases and some types of cancer. Yokohama, Japan has an annual festival dedicated entirely to Pikachu. The Pikachu Outbreak is a week-long festival where masses of dancing Pikachu, along with countless statues, completely take over the city. Blowing smoke up the rear used to actually be a common cure for many ailments. In the 18th century, especially in Europe, devices called tobacco smoke enemas were used to try to revive drowned people or treat digestive problems. There were even kits available near rivers such as the Thames for emergencies, and the practice was promoted by medical societies before falling out of use when science began to question its effectiveness. The word dude was first used in the 1800s as an insult toward young men who were overly concerned with keeping up with the latest fashions. Ha, look at that guy. Alzheimer's disease does not affect emotional memory as strongly as informational memory. As a result, patients with Alzheimer's, upon receiving bad news, will quickly forget the news but remain sad and have no idea why. This is related to the fact that different areas of the brain process emotions and explicit memories. So even if the context fades, the emotional feeling can persist for a longer time. Psychopaths are immune to contagious yawning and are less likely to be startled. So the next time you yawn and the person next to you does not even react, be careful. While dogs operate under a strict hierarchy, wolves actually cooperate and communicate with each other to make decisions as a group. More recent studies have shown that wolf packs function more like organized families than rigid dominant systems, where the parents guide and the other members collaborate in hunting, caring for the young, and defending territory through vocal signals and complex body language. No one has died from a confirmed spider bite in Australia since 1979. Deaths related to spiders actually occur more from being startled by them, such as while driving. Insulting someone's mother exists in almost every culture and is as old as humanity itself, with examples in Shakespeare and in the Bible. In many languages, this type of offense is considered especially strong because it attacks the family core and personal honor. Even in ancient texts and theatrical works, variations of this device can be found, used both to provoke and to intensify conflicts between characters, which shows its persistence throughout history. Sometimes, lionesses can develop manes. Such masculinized females likely arise when the embryo undergoes a variation, either at conception or while in the womb. In some cases, these lionesses have been observed to show elevated testosterone levels, which not only influences the appearance of the mane, but also their behavior, making them more territorial or dominant within the group. They may even roar more frequently and display behaviors typically associated with males. Your eyebrows renew themselves every 64 days. This process is part of the natural hair cycle, which includes phases of growth, rest, and shedding, although in eyebrows it is much shorter than in scalp hair. That is why they maintain a relatively constant length and do not grow indefinitely, since each hair falls out and is replaced by a new one before reaching large sizes. The difference between terror and horror is that terror occurs in anticipation of the horrifying experience, while horror occurs after it. In literature and film, terror is usually built through tension, uncertainty, and what is not seen, while horror appears when the threat is revealed or the damage occurs. Authors such as Edgar Allan Poe leaned more towards psychological terror, while others like H.P. Lovecraft combined both elements to create a deeper sense of unease. There are red bananas that have a sweet, creamy flavor somewhat similar to raspberries. These varieties, such as the well-known red Dhaka, are more common in regions of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and tend to be smaller and denser than traditional yellow bananas. In addition, they contain slightly higher levels of certain nutrients such as beta-carotene and vitamin C, and their flesh tends to become even softer and more aromatic as they ripen. In 1969, NASA had the technology to land on the moon, but not the technology to fake the moon landings. The equipment to fake the broadcast simply did not exist. At that time, achieving convincing visual effects of that level would have required techniques that had not yet been developed, especially to simulate low gravity, lighting without an atmosphere, and real-time transmissions from hundreds of thousands of miles away. In addition, the signals were tracked by independent stations in different countries, which made it extremely difficult to fake an event of that magnitude without being detected. In ancient Egypt, men could take time off work to care for their daughters and wives who were menstruating. Some administrative records in Ostraca suggest that there were work leaves for family and health reasons, which included caring for household members under certain conditions. In addition, Egyptians had a particular view of health and the body, with medical practices documented in papyri such as the Ebers Papyrus, where treatments and care related to the menstrual cycle are mentioned. NASA often shows the Hollywood movie Armageddon as part of its management training program, and then asks its new staff to identify as many scientific inaccuracies as possible. There are at least 168 of them. The exercise is used to encourage critical thinking and decision-making under pressure, as participants must detect flaws related to physics, engineering, and space procedures, something crucial in real missions where small mistakes can have enormous consequences. Chimpanzees look both ways before crossing the road. The National Museum of Natural History in Paris began studying their vigilance and found that 57% of the time they ran across the road to be safer. When the Confederate Army ran out of gunpowder, bat caves were raided for their droppings. The high nitrate content in bat guano provided a key ingredient for the production of gunpowder. In several regions of the South, such as Texas and Alabama, expeditions were organized to collect it in large quantities, even hundreds of feet inside caverns. This resource became so valuable that some caves were guarded, and guano came to be considered a strategic supply during the war. The Empire State Building generates more revenue from its observation decks than from renting office space. The large influx of tourists throughout the year turns its observation areas into one of its main sources of income, surpassing traditional rents during certain periods. In addition, the experience includes access to different levels, exhibits, and extended hours, which further increases its profitability within the tourism sector. Jason Paget was an athlete who never went beyond pre-algebra, but after being attacked outside a bar, he began to see the world in pixelated geometric shapes. He soon understood the concept of pi and developed a sudden ability to draw complex fractals by hand, and is now a recognized mathematical genius. But do not go getting into fights outside bars thinking you will end up becoming a math genius. The whales of knowledge do not approve of that. A single share of the Coca-Cola Company purchased in 1919 for $40 could be worth several million dollars today, if stock splits and dividend reinvestment over time are taken into account. In 1991, drug trafficker Pablo Escobar reached an agreement with authorities that allowed him to confine himself in a prison built to his specifications, known as La Catedral. This place had various unusual amenities, such as a soccer field, a bar, and other recreational facilities. However, after a series of irregularities inside the facility, authorities attempted to transfer him, which led to his escape and return to fugitive status. There is a prison in Finland where the only thing keeping inmates inside is a yellow wooden fence. These types of facilities, known as open prisons, operate with a focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment. Inmates can work, study, and even leave during the day under certain conditions, which aims to facilitate their reintegration into society and reduce reoffending once they complete their sentence. During Roman times, salt was worth its weight in gold, and soldiers were sometimes paid in salt, which is where the word salary comes from. The term comes from the Latin salarium, an allowance related to the purchase of salt or its transport, since it was an essential resource for preserving food. Its economic importance was such that entire trade routes, such as the Via Salaria, were established for its distribution, making it a strategic good within the Roman Empire. In 2002, Thad Roberts, a former NASA intern, was sentenced to 6 years in a federal prison after stealing moon rocks collected during the Apollo 11 lunar landing mission so he could have sex with his girlfriend on them. In the movie Saving Private Ryan, the directors portrayed combat so realistically that veterans had to leave theaters during the opening scene, stating that it was the most realistic depiction of combat they had ever seen. Humans are the kings of the planet when it comes to long-distance running. We can outlast every animal on the planet and run in conditions where no other animal can do so. There is a mental condition called maladaptive daydreaming that causes people to excessively daydream to escape reality as a defense mechanism due to trauma. Although it is not formally recognized in diagnostic manuals such as the DSM-5, it has been studied by psychologists who describe it as a persistent pattern that can interfere with daily life. Those who experience it often create complex imaginary worlds and spend long hours in these fantasies, sometimes accompanied by repetitive movements or music to intensify the experience. A photo of Daniel Cabrera, a 9-year-old from the Philippines, doing his homework on the street with the help of light from a local McDonald's, led to the world donating money, school supplies, and a college scholarship for both him and his family. Mice can sing just like birds. It is simply inaudible to human ears. They emit ultrasonic vocalizations, especially during courtship, which have complex and repetitive patterns comparable to songs. Scientists have studied these sounds to better understand animal communication and have discovered that they can even vary in pitch and rhythm, as if they were small musical compositions outside the range of our hearing. The Unison Spa House in Hakone, a town southeast of Japan, now offers ramen noodle baths. The bath, which consists of ramen, pork broth, and synthetic noodles, supposedly helps improve customer skin, and it is delicious. The experiences you have throughout your life leave chemical markers on your DNA, essentially recording superficial experiences in your descendants. This phenomenon is related to epigenetics, where factors such as stress, diet, or environment can influence how certain genes are turned on or off without changing the DNA sequence. Some research suggests that certain effects can be passed on to later generations, although the extent and duration of these changes are still being studied. New Zealand denies residence visas to people if they have a body mass index that is too high, and there have been cases of people being rejected simply because of their weight. This is part of their medical evaluations for immigration, where the goal is to reduce potential future costs in the public health system. In some cases, applicants can appeal or demonstrate that their condition will not imply significant expenses, and there have been publicized situations in which initial decisions were reviewed after more detailed medical evaluations. On an island in Indonesia, there is an ancient tradition in which, when a baby dies at a very early age, the body may be placed inside the trunk of a tree. Over time, the tree continues to grow and naturally covers the space. This practice is part of local cultural beliefs that aim to honor the memory of the child and maintain a symbolic connection with nature. In Sweden, it is illegal to name your baby Metallica, Superman, Veranda, IKEA, or Elvis. This is because the country has naming laws designed to protect children from names that may be offensive, inappropriate, or cause problems in their daily lives. Authorities can reject names considered unsuitable, especially if they are brands, titles, or terms that do not function as proper names within the Swedish cultural context. When neuroscientist James Fallon was studying the brains of psychopathic killers, he scanned his own brain as a control, only to discover that he himself was a psychopath. When he told his friends and family, the universal response was that it explained a lot. The world record for the largest number ever counted belongs to Jeremy Harper. He streamed the entire process online and raised money for charity. He reached 1 million, and it took him 3 months. During the broadcast, he counted at regular intervals for hours each day, with short breaks to rest, which turned the project into a kind of mental marathon. In addition, thousands of people followed the event in real time, donating and participating as he advanced number by number. The British banking giant HSBC admitted to laundering billions of dollars for Colombian and Mexican drug cartels, in addition to violating a number of major banking laws. But somehow, there were no criminal charges and no one went to prison. A South Korean man named Woo Bum Kon was involved in a tragic event that deeply marked his country. He became enraged after being woken up by his girlfriend who was trying to kill a fly on his chest. In Japan, laws regarding the use and possession of firearms are very strict and heavily regulated. In some cases, even after tragic incidents, possible violations of these rules have been pointed out, which reflects the level of rigor with which these laws are enforced in the country. Prairie dogs have a complex communication system. It is so advanced that they not only have different calls depending on the type of predator, but they also form sentences that describe the predator. A man in the United Kingdom was so fed up with his city not fixing potholes that he went and spray-painted penises on them, earning himself the nickname Wanksy. According to his brother, the last words of Vincent van Gogh were, "The sadness will last forever." The phrase was attributed to his brother Theo, who was by his side in his final moments, and it has remained one of the most remembered quotes of the artist. Throughout his life, Van Gogh faced emotional and economic difficulties. And although today he is considered one of the most influential painters in history, his recognition came mainly after his death. Breakups are actually more painful for men. In a study of around 5,705 participants from 96 countries, it was found that while women experience intense pain immediately after a breakup and then recover fairly quickly, men, on the other hand, move on quickly but remain affected for a longer time. It took Ronda Rousey a total of only 25 minutes and 36 seconds to win all 12 of her fights. Most of her victories came by submission, especially with her famous armbar, and several ended in less than 1 minute. This early dominance in her career helped establish her as one of the most influential figures in the popularization of women's mixed martial arts worldwide. If you come across a stranded dolphin, do not help it back into the water. They often beach themselves on purpose because they are sick or injured and are trying to avoid drowning. In these cases, it is best to contact specialized marine wildlife rescue teams, as they can assess the situation and decide whether it is safe to return the animal to the sea. In addition, handling them without knowledge can cause more harm or put people at risk, since they are strong animals and sensitive to stress. A Chinese millionaire began selling cans of fresh air for 80 cents each in response to worsening air pollution in China and made more than $6 million. The idea emerged as a mix of protest and business, as each can was marketed with names of regions known for their clean air. Although many took it as a joke, the product became popular in cities with high levels of smog, reflecting growing concern about air quality and its effects on health. During the 1970s, in Cambodia, under the Khmer Rouge regime, many people were persecuted for their education or for traits associated with certain lifestyles. In that extreme context, even details such as appearance could generate suspicion, reflecting the harshness of that historical period. The former chief executive officer of YouTube, Susan Wojcicki, is known for having rented out her garage to Larry Page and Sergey Brin in 1998, when they were taking the first steps of Google. That space became the company's first headquarters, marking the beginning of one of the most influential companies in the world. People who stay up late and sleep in tend to be more eccentric, impulsive, and novelty-seeking. They are also more likely to develop addictive behaviors, mental disorders, and antisocial tendencies. Patoos are a type of bird that uses body posture to camouflage themselves and appear to be part of a tree trunk. These birds remain motionless with their beaks pointing upward and their eyes partially closed to mimic the texture of bark. In addition, their mottled plumage and their ability to remain completely still for long periods make them experts at camouflage, avoiding predators and going unnoticed even at close range. Breastfeeding allows a baby to transmit germs to the mother so that her immune system can respond and produce antibodies for the baby. This exchange occurs in part through the baby's saliva during feeding, which can trigger specific immune responses in the mother. As a result, breast milk adapts dynamically, providing antibodies and immune cells that help protect the baby from common infections in the first months of life. There is only one species of warm-blooded fish on Earth, the opa. This fish, also known as the moonfish, can keep its body warmer than the surrounding water thanks to a heat exchange system in its gills. This allows it to swim faster and more efficiently in cold, deep waters, giving it an advantage over other species that depend entirely on environmental temperature. Inmates in a prison in Bolivia live like a society. They have jobs, buy or rent their housing, and often live with their families. This model is seen in places such as San Pedro Prison, where the state has a limited presence inside the facility and the inmates themselves organize daily life. There are small businesses, internal committees, and different sectors based on each inmate's economic resources, creating a rather unusual social dynamic within the prison system. Crows have been shown to be as intelligent as great apes. They are capable of imagination, anticipating possible future events, and solving problems that require abstract reasoning. Bowhead whales are among the longest living mammals. In 2007, it was discovered that a specimen captured off the coast of Alaska had the tip of a 35-inch explosive harpoon embedded deep in its neck. The projectile was manufactured in Massachusetts around 1890, which suggests that the whale survived a hunt more than a century ago. They are as resilient as the whales of knowledge. The movie Straight Outta Compton was not shown in Compton because there are no movie theaters there. For years, the city did not have operating cinemas, which meant that residents had to travel to nearby areas to watch new releases. The mathematician Paul Erdős could mentally calculate, given a person's age, how many seconds they had lived when he was 4 years old. From a very young age, he showed extraordinary abilities with numbers, and it is said that even at that age, he could perform complex operations effortlessly. Throughout his life, that ability was reflected in his productivity, collaborating with hundreds of mathematicians and publishing an impressive number of papers in different areas. The Isle of Discussion in Scotland is where, historically, those with disputes were taken to the island with cheese and whiskey to resolve their problems, and could not leave until they reached a mutual agreement. Places like Elaine a Quamrid reflect this local tradition, where isolation forced the parties to talk without distractions. Although today it is seen as a cultural curiosity, the idea of separating those involved to facilitate agreements has influenced modern methods of mediation and conflict resolution. Singapore is the only country in modern world history that gained its independence against its own will. In 1965, it was expelled from Malaysia after strong political and ethnic tensions, which forced its leaders to accept the separation. The decision was so unexpected that then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew announced independence visibly emotional on television, marking one of the most unusual moments in the formation of a modern nation. Bananas have more commercial regulations imposed on them than AK-47 rifles. This is because their international trade is subject to strict standards of quality, size, appearance, and ripeness in markets such as the European Union and the United States. In addition, as one of the most exported agricultural products in the world, they are regulated by trade agreements, phytosanitary controls, and much more detailed import standards than many other goods. A Chinese man bought and raised 2 puppies, caring for them even though they frequently killed and ate chickens, and later discovered that they were bears. Argentine ants have a worldwide supercolony. In fact, if they boarded a plane and traveled to a different continent, they would be welcomed by a foreign branch of the colony. Unlike other species, they do not show aggression toward each other even when separated by thousands of miles, since they share a similar chemical profile that allows them to recognize each other as part of the same system. This has facilitated their global expansion, making them one of the most successful invasive species on the planet. Intelligent people underestimate themselves, and ignorant people think they are brilliant. This is a cognitive bias called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It is where highly skilled individuals assume that the things they find easy are also easy for others, and less skilled individuals are so incompetent that they cannot recognize their own lack of ability. A survey conducted by Buy T-Shirts Online says that those who wear black are seen as serious and trustworthy people. Nearly 50% of women and 64% of men agree that black conveys confidence. Abraham Lincoln created the United States Secret Service just a few hours before he was assassinated. However, at that time, the agency's main mission was not to protect the president, but to combat counterfeiting, which was a serious problem in the country. The presidential protection role was added years later, after the assassination of other leaders, which transformed its role into what is known today. Charles Baldwin, designer of the International Biohazard symbol, said about his design that they wanted to create something that was memorable but without meaning, so that people could be educated about what it represents. George Washington had a net worth of $525 million in his time, adjusted for inflation. Much of his wealth came from extensive agricultural lands, especially at his Mount Vernon plantation, as well as investments and productive assets. He also inherited properties and increased his fortune through strategic purchases, which made him one of the richest men in the colonies and later in the young nation. Two brothers from the United Kingdom, Jeff and John Bitmead, created an adult version of the red and yellow Little Tikes toy car. It is road legal, fully functional, and can reach up to 70 miles per hour. At the Institute for Marine Mammal Studies in Mississippi, dolphins were trained to deliver trash that fell into the pools in exchange for fish. One dolphin named Kelly was smart enough to hide pieces of paper under a rock, tearing off smaller pieces of the paper to get more fish. That is one smart dolphin. Dr. Duncan McDougall Haverhill once tried to prove that the human soul had weight by placing dying patients on a giant scale at the exact moment of death. And, believe it or not, at that exact moment, there was a slight decrease in weight. The United States is the only nation that prints all of its paper money in the same size and color. Because of this, 3,300,000 blind and visually impaired people in the United States depend on another person, whether a family member, a friend, a cashier, or even a bank employee, to identify the denomination of each bill. That is a lot of trust. In 2007, a stray dog saved Shannon Lorio after she crashed down an embankment and was thrown through the back window of her car. The German Shepherd came out of the woods, pulled her by the collar of her coat out of the trunk, and dragged her 164 feet through the bushes to the road, where she could be seen by passing motorists. And they say dogs are just man's best friend. The word outlaw originally meant outside the protection of the law, so you could rob or kill them without legal consequences. It comes from the medieval concept of outlaw, where a person was declared outside legal protection after committing certain crimes, losing their rights and protection. In that context, anyone could harm them without facing punishment, making it one of the harshest penalties of the time. More people have died taking selfies than from shark attacks. Many of these incidents occur in dangerous places, such as cliffs, train tracks, or near wild animals, where a moment of distraction can be fatal. In contrast, shark attacks are extremely rare worldwide, which makes the risk associated with certain reckless behaviors when trying to capture a striking photo, in practice, higher. Astronaut Buzz Aldrin had to complete a military travel voucher for reimbursement of his mission to the moon, and was reimbursed $33.31. The form included details such as the trip from Kennedy Space Center to the moon and back, following standard United States Air Force procedures. Thomas Jefferson proposed in 1784 to end slavery in all territories, but his bill failed in Congress by a single vote. Artist Susan Beatrice recycles old watch parts and turns them into intricate steampunk-style sculptures. She uses gears, springs, and tiny mechanical components to shape animals and detailed figures, often with a fantastical feel. Each piece can take weeks to complete due to the level of precision required, and her work has gained recognition for combining recycling, craftsmanship, and a very distinctive visual design. 1,500,000 people were displaced from their homes in Beijing in preparation for the 2008 Olympic Games. The relocations were linked to infrastructure projects, such as new subway lines, avenues, and the construction of sports venues. In many cases, residents received financial compensation or housing in peripheral areas, although there were also criticisms about the speed of the evictions and the impact on traditional communities that disappeared with the city's modernization. Kieran Cable, a 20-year-old from South Wales, spent so much time with his girlfriend that his friends said he had practically disappeared from their lives. So much so that, after 18 months of unanswered calls and emails, 50 of Cable's friends decided to surprise him with a fake funeral that included a coffin, a hearse, and even a eulogy. There is no need to change after getting a partner. Friends, just include them in the group. It is all friendship. Hatebeak is a black metal band whose lead singer is a parrot. The project started as an experimental idea within the underground scene, and the bird, named Waldo, provided the vocalizations that were later integrated into the music. Although they did not perform live for obvious reasons, they released recordings that went viral among metal fans due to how unusual the concept is. A Japanese gymnast named Shun Fujimoto broke his knee at the 1976 Olympic Games, but did not tell anyone and performed amazingly despite his injury, even winning a gold medal for his team. Stephen J. Russell was a con artist who escaped from prison 4 times. The first time, he simply walked out. After being recaptured, Russell reduced and paid his bail by pretending to be a judge. He escaped his next capture by posing as a doctor, and did it again by faking his death. He eventually received a sentence of 144 years that he is still serving today. Portuguese artist David Oliveira uses wire to draw in the air, creating sculptures that look like pencil sketches. His works play with perspective, since, from certain angles, they appear to be simple lines, but when viewed from different positions, they reveal complex, three-dimensional forms. This style allows him to transform light strokes into figures full of movement, as if a drawing had come to life outside of paper. When their son was diagnosed with xeroderma pigmentosum, a condition in which exposure to sunlight causes third-degree burns and cancer, a couple from New York, Dan and Karen Mahar, founded Camp Sundown. It is a summer camp for children with this genetic disorder where all activities take place after sunset. In 1942, a British forest ranger in India made an alarming discovery at about 15,998 feet above sea level. At the bottom of a small valley, a frozen lake was found absolutely full of skeletons. Panama is the only place in the world where you can see the sun rise over the Pacific Ocean and set over the Atlantic. This is due to the curved shape of the isthmus, which in certain areas tilts from east to west, creating this unusual perspective. Elevated places such as Cerro Ancon or some areas of Colón province allow you to observe this phenomenon on clear days, something that even surprised explorers and navigators since the early centuries of European contact. Architects in Iceland wanted to take the appearance of utility towers beyond their basic functional structure, so they created a design proposal called the Land of Giants. It essentially turns electrical towers into human-shaped sculptures. That is cool. In 2002, a Hooters in Panama City, Florida, offered employees the chance to win a Toyota. But when the winning waitress, Jody Berry, was given a toy model of a Toyota as a joke, she sued and won enough to choose any type of Toyota she wanted. Scientists at Oregon State University have developed an algae that tastes exactly like bacon when fried and has almost twice the nutritional value of kale. It is a variety of red algae known as dulse, rich in protein, minerals, and antioxidants. When cooked, its flavor profile changes noticeably, which has sparked interest both in the food industry and in sustainable alternatives to animal-based products. In 2013, a dog named Killian helped protect a baby by showing unusual behavior whenever the babysitter was present, such as placing himself between them and alerting his owners. This caught the parents' attention, who decided to investigate the situation and discovered that the baby was not being treated properly. Thanks to this, they were able to take action and ensure the child's safety. Anhedonia is the word for the feeling of when you cannot find joy in things that usually bring you happiness. It is often associated with conditions such as depression and can affect both the enjoyment of activities and personal relationships. In some cases, it is also related to changes in the brain's reward systems, which makes it difficult to experience pleasure even in situations that were previously gratifying. Mobile phone throwing is a sport in Finland. It emerged in the late 1990s as a curious way to get rid of old devices, and over time, it became an organized competition with clear rules and different categories. There is even a world championship held annually, where participants are evaluated both on distance and style, combining strength and creativity in a rather unusual discipline. During the American Civil War, the wounds of some soldiers actually glowed blue. These soldiers had a better survival rate, so the glow was called Angel's Glow. The luminescence was actually caused by bacteria that produce antibiotics and live inside nematodes that settled in the soldiers' open wounds. During Hurricane Katrina, the Orleans Parish Prison faced a critical situation due to flooding and lack of coordination in the evacuation. Many inmates were trapped for several hours in difficult conditions until they were finally rescued. Doodlebug is an orphaned baby kangaroo that was found abandoned on the side of the road when it approached a human, raised its arms, and asked to be held. The rescuer later gave it a teddy bear, and it would not stop hugging it. There is a pepper grown in Japan known as the shishito pepper. Only 1 out of 10 is spicy, and there is no way to know which one in advance. It is like Russian roulette with peppers. At the restaurant El Diablo in the Canary Islands, food is served using the geothermal heat of a real volcano. It is located in Timanfaya National Park in Lanzarote, where the heat beneath the surface remains so intense that digging just a few feet reveals extremely high temperatures. Chefs cook on a grill placed directly over a volcanic opening, taking advantage of this natural heat without the need for gas or electricity, making it a unique culinary experience in the world. Hummingbirds have such a high metabolism that they are always just hours away from starving. To sustain their constant flight and rapid wing movement, they must feed almost continuously, consuming nectar and small insects throughout the day. At night, they enter a state called torpor, in which they drastically reduce their metabolism and body temperature to conserve energy and survive until morning. The Incas measured their units of time by how long it would take to cook a potato. Yes, all right, brother. I will see you in about 3/4 of a potato, okay? Movie soundtracks for horror films sometimes include infrasound, which is a sound below the range of human hearing. Although we cannot hear it, we can still feel it, and it has been shown that infrasound induces anxiety, heart palpitations, and even chills. In 2015, a man who left without paying his bill at a restaurant in the Houston area was seen running into an empty building across the street. The police officers who arrived jokingly shouted, "Marco!" to which the suspect accidentally responded, "Polo." He was arrested immediately. In 2004, Google anonymously posted mathematical equations on billboards in Harvard Square and Silicon Valley that, if solved, led to a website with another equation, which in turn allowed you to submit your resume. I feel like if you get that far, you are already in. The total cost of climbing Mount Everest to pay for Sherpas, supplies, and permits is between $60,000 and $120,000. Much of the expense comes from permits issued by Nepal, as well as specialized equipment, supplemental oxygen, guides, and high-altitude logistics. In addition, expeditions can last several weeks, which increases the costs of food, transportation, and the physical preparation required to attempt the summit. Japanese engineer Kunihiko Saito invented a new and small personal transportation system, the wall car, similar to an electric skateboard, but small enough to fit perfectly in your backpack. In France, it is illegal for grocery stores to throw away edible food. Stores must donate unused food to charities or facilities that process it into animal feed or compost. MI5 once had a plan to use gerbils to detect terrorists and spies at airports. This is because their sense of smell can sharply detect increases in adrenaline in people. But the project was scrapped when the gerbils proved unable to tell the difference between terrorists and those who were simply afraid of flying. In Japan, you can hire a handsome man to come to your office and watch sad videos with you until you cry, and then wipe your tears for you. This service is part of a trend known as ikemeso danshi, where actors offer emotional support in workplace or personal settings. It emerged as a curious way to relieve stress, especially in demanding work environments. On July 23, 1983, Air Canada Flight 143, with 69 people on board, ran out of fuel at an altitude of 7.8 miles. Miraculously, the pilot managed to glide the plane down safely since he was a very experienced glider pilot. In addition, 2,300 pounds of jet fuel had been loaded, instead of approximately 5,070 pounds. Those conversions matter. Iowa and Montana will revoke your driver's license if you cannot pay your student loans. These measures emerged as part of policies to pressure debt repayment, although they have been widely criticized for affecting people's ability to work and pay those obligations. Over time, several jurisdictions have reviewed or eliminated these types of penalties for being counterproductive. A typical Rihanna single costs around $75,000 to produce and another $1 million to promote. But the lyrics are usually written in about 15 minutes. Treadmills were actually created to punish English prisoners in 1818. The device, known as the tread wheel, forced inmates to walk for hours on a rotating wheel that was sometimes also used to grind grain or pump water. Over time, this system was abandoned for being too harsh, but the idea evolved into the modern exercise treadmills used in gyms today. A 31-year-old man named Jason Willis from Waterford, Wisconsin, was banned from the internet in 2014 after sending naked men to a neighbor's house through a Craigslist ad. That is sad. A 14-karat gold Lego brick was given in the early 1980s to employees who had worked at the Lego factory in Germany for more than 25 years. They are valued at more than $15,000. Igor Vorobitsyn, a 42-year-old Russian fisherman, was brutally attacked by a bear, but was suddenly saved when his ringtone went off, which his granddaughter had installed on his phone, Baby by Justin Bieber. This sent the bear running back into the forest. I do not really blame it. His early stuff was pretty bad. When Benjamin Franklin died in 1790, he left $4,400 each to the cities of Boston and Philadelphia. but with the condition that the money could not be spent for 200 years. By 1990, the Boston Fund was worth more than $5 million. Buzz Aldrin's mother's maiden name was, coincidentally, Moon. Her full name was Marion Moon, which is quite a striking coincidence considering that her son would become one of the first people to walk on the moon during the Apollo 11 moon landing mission. In Finland, speeding fines are calculated as a percentage of a person's income. This means that some Finnish millionaires face fines of more than $100,000. A high school student from South Carolina, Alex Stone, was arrested, suspended, and had his locker searched because of a creative writing assignment where he mentioned buying a gun to shoot his neighbor's pet dinosaur. Astronomers have discovered that the largest known diamond in the universe is a star called Lucy that has 10 billion trillion carats. This white dwarf has a carbon interior that crystallized as it cooled, forming a giant diamond in the sky. Scientists could not resist naming it after the Beatles song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. The Shiawassee Police Department in Michigan organized a fake wedding on September 21, 1990. The bride and groom were undercover police officers who invited local drug dealers to their big day. At the reception, they arrested all of them at once. Action video gamers are better learners. They excel at predicting the sequence of upcoming events and become better students by playing fast-paced games. Various studies have found that this type of game can improve visual attention, rapid decision-making, and the ability to process multiple stimuli at the same time. In addition, those who play them frequently tend to adapt better to changing environments since they constantly train their brains to react accurately to unexpected situations. It is illegal not to flush the toilet in Singapore. For failing to do so, you will be fined $150, and police officers are known to carry out inspections. Robert Emmett O'Donnell, the first person to jump from the Brooklyn Bridge, was a professional diver who wanted to prove that people did not die simply from falling through the air. He proved he was right by falling 135 feet safely through the air, only to die when he hit the water. Only 1% of friendships formed in 7th grade remain intact by 12th grade, according to a study published in Psychological Science. Engineers in Canada receive an iron ring to remind them to remain humble. It is in memory of a bridge that collapsed twice due to incorrect calculations involving iron. The cost of a tourist visa for China is $140 for Americans and $30 for the rest of the world. Despite having DNA evidence from the suspect, German police were unable to prosecute a jewelry robbery of $6.8 million because the DNA belonged to identical twins and there was no evidence to prove which of them was actually guilty. The Yakuza, the largest organized crime syndicate in Japan, provided food, water, blankets, diapers, and more during the Japanese earthquakes of 1995 and 2011. They even had a faster response time than the Japanese government. George Hotz, then 17 years old, was the first to unlock a first-generation iPhone and sold the phone for a Nissan 350Z and 3 locked phones. Adidas will cancel any sponsorship agreement it has with a player if it turns out that the player is involved with Scientology. Panera and Chipotle are the only restaurant chains in the United States that have meat offerings that do not use antibiotics. Puppy pregnancy syndrome is a condition in which the patient believes they are pregnant with puppies after being bitten by a dog. Yes, that is a real thing. In 1990, activists with disabilities left their wheelchairs and crawled up the steps of the Capitol, disrupting senators to push for the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. There is a town in Australia where the entire population, more than 200 people, lives underground in abandoned opal mines. Residents there have electricity and plumbing and are known to find large amounts of opal when doing renovations. In 2001, Pizza Hut paid the Russian Space Agency to send a pizza to the International Space Station at a cost of $1 million. That is an expensive pizza. Shortly after returning from the moon and leaving NASA, Buzz Aldrin had an unsuccessful career as a United States Air Force test pilot. He then began drinking, had an affair, suffered from depression, got divorced, remarried, divorced again, and became a Cadillac salesman, where he did not sell a single car for 6 months. Wow, that is actually incredibly sad. Former United States President Bill Clinton claims that the Netflix series House of Cards is 99% real. That is truly terrifying. Queen Elizabeth II had more than 30 corgis throughout her life. Her bond with these dogs began at a young age and became one of her most recognizable traits. Most of them were of the Pembroke Welsh Corgi breed, many of them direct descendants of her first dog, Susan. A motorcyclist named Philip A. Contos took part in a demonstration related to helmet use. During the ride, an accident occurred in which he suffered a severe blow to the head. Africam is a website that offers you a live video stream 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of protected areas in southern Africa. You can see elephants, giraffes, zebras, hyenas, and all kinds of wildlife species living there. Photographer Champu Baritone created a series of photos aimed at exposing the truth by mocking Instagram users who crop and filter their lives to make them seem more impressive than they really are. Colonel Sanders often made surprise visits to KFC restaurants. If he was not satisfied with the food, he would throw it on the floor and curse at the employees. Steve Jobs had a grade point average in high school of 2.65. The tallest man in the world, Bao Shishun, used his 3-foot 6-inch long arms to remove plastic from the stomachs of 2 dolphins, ultimately saving their lives after trainers had tried numerous other methods. Can you imagine that? Japan has a network of roads that actually play music when you drive over them at the correct speed. These melody roads work thanks to grooves carved into the pavement that vibrate differently depending on the vehicle's speed, producing specific notes as the tires pass over them. Some play popular melodies and are designed to encourage safer driving, since they only sound correct when the recommended speed is maintained. The United States Navy maintains a research vessel that is designed to be flipped vertically. As a result, most rooms have 2 doors, one to use when the ship is horizontal and another when it is vertical. In 2000, the cigarette giant Philip Morris introduced fire-safe cigarettes, which actually posed a greater risk of starting fires when left unattended. You mean we cannot trust cigarette companies? What is this world coming to? There is a waterfall where no one knows where the water goes. The Devil's Kettle Falls in Minnesota flows into a giant pothole with no visible outlet. Researchers have poured dye and logs into it and then monitored the lake for any sign of them. So far, nothing has been found. It is estimated that in the United States, there are more than 18 million cancer survivors, a number that has been increasing thanks to advances in early detection and treatments. A man named Chen Shi spends his weekends at the Yangtze River Bridge in Nanjing, a place known for being a critical point where many people go through difficult moments. His goal is to offer support and companionship to those who need it, and thanks to his efforts, he has helped numerous people reconsider their decision and seek help. Pixar spent 3 years studying the physics of curly hair to accurately represent Merida's hair in Brave. The team developed specific simulation tools to recreate thousands of individual strands with natural movement, allowing the hair to respond realistically to wind, humidity, and the character's motion, making it one of the most technically impressive aspects of the film. There is a fish called the black dragonfish that looks like a creature from the Alien movies. This animal lives in the depths of the ocean, where almost no light reaches, and has remarkable adaptations, such as bioluminescent organs that allow it to attract prey in the darkness. In addition, its elongated body, sharp teeth, and extendable jaw give it a truly unsettling appearance, typical of an extreme environment where survival depends on taking advantage of any opportunity. There is a Chinese Segway knockoff company called Ninebot that used the money it made selling Segway imitations to buy the original Segway Inc. company. The acquisition was completed in 2015, when Ninebot, with investment from companies such as Xiaomi, integrated the original technology and brand into its business, establishing itself as one of the leading manufacturers of personal electric vehicles worldwide. If you are an Indian American and you own a motel, there is a 70% chance that your last name is Patel. An anonymous 20-year-old British man from Birmingham dresses up as Spider-Man at night to help homeless people by buying them food at the supermarket. Kev Jumba, a YouTuber, created a second YouTube channel and donated 100% of its advertising revenue to a community in Kenya, which used that money to build the first high school in their community and named the school in his honor. Americans work 137 more hours per year than a Japanese worker, 260 more hours per year than a British worker, and 499 more hours per year than French workers. In 1994, a 75-pound bag of cocaine fell from an airplane and landed in the middle of a Florida neighborhood watch meeting. Billy Milligan, a criminal, had such a disturbed life that his mind fractured into at least 24 personalities. For each of these personalities, his speech pattern was different. His accents were different, and he even sat differently in chairs. Before Saladin, the first Sultan of Egypt, died in 1193, he had given away all his wealth to his poor subjects. His final estate consisted of a single piece of gold and 40 pieces of silver, not even enough to pay for his funeral. Donald Trump was actually the inspiration for the character of Biff Tannen in the Back to the Future trilogy. In particular, the version of Biff in the second movie, a rich and arrogant tycoon with a large casino, was influenced by Trump's public image in the 1980s, when he was known for his flashy style and media presence. Sam Greiner from the Success Kid meme used his success to start a GoFundMe page, which raised nearly $100,000 for his father's kidney transplant. There's a limestone wall in Bolivia that holds more than 5,000 dinosaur footprints, some of which date back nearly 68 million years. This site, known as Calorco, is located near Sucre and is considered one of the largest track sites in the world. The footprints belong to different species and provide valuable information about how these animals moved and coexisted during the late Cretaceous period. There is a bookstore in Australia where the books are wrapped in paper with short descriptions so that no one can judge a book by its cover. Humpback whales often let dolphins ride on their heads, just for fun. Believe it or not, adult coloring books are a major trend, and publishers are actually struggling to keep up with demand. The books are successfully used to reduce stress, relieve anxiety, and as a rehabilitation aid for patients recovering from strokes. A biotechnology startup has managed to 3D print rhinoceros horns that are genetically similar to a real horn. Best of all, the company plans to flood Chinese and Vietnamese markets, where demand is high, to lower the price and therefore the demand. John Cena, the WWE superstar, has granted more than 400 wishes for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, more than anyone else in the history of the charity. There is a nightclub in Devon, United Kingdom, that used to hand out free lollipops to reduce late-night disturbances, hoping that intoxicated customers would not be able to shout or cause trouble while sucking on them. And it worked. The whiptail lizard is a species composed entirely of females. Males have completely gone extinct. Interestingly, they are not hermaphrodites. The females actually lay and hatch from unfertilized eggs. The most densely populated island on the planet is Santa Cruz del Islote, off the coast of Colombia. It measures only about 0.005 square miles, but it is home to more than 1,200 people. There is a hot dog vendor in New York City named Mohammed Mustafa who pays $289,000 a year for his location. The business must be doing well. The concept of rap battles has existed since the 5th century, where poets engaged in verbal contests. It was a spoken word event where poets would actually insult each other in verse. It is like epic rap battles of history. In the 1930s, 2 psychologists adopted a baby chimpanzee and tried to raise her as their own child alongside their real son, Donald, to see if this would make the chimpanzee learn human behavior. But they stopped the experiment after 9 months because their son actually began to behave more like the chimpanzee. On August 16, 1996, at the Brookfield Zoo, a 3-year-old child fell into a gorilla enclosure and lost consciousness. But Binti Jua, a female gorilla, protected the small child from other gorillas, cradled him in her arms, and carried him to an entrance where zookeepers were able to retrieve him. There is an item from the so-called McDonald's secret menu that some people know as the McGangbang. It consists of combining a McChicken with a double cheeseburger, creating an unconventional mix that has become popular online among those who enjoy trying unusual menu combinations. People actually used to wash their clothes in Old Faithful, located in Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. They would place their clothes in the geyser. It would erupt and clean them. However, this really only worked for linen and cotton fabrics. Wool clothing would be destroyed. A study once found that while sober, rats prefer silence, but under the influence of substances, they prefer jazz. The Burj Khalifa in Dubai is the tallest man-made structure in the world, standing at 2,723 feet tall. Its construction took around 6 years and required thousands of workers. It has more than 160 habitable floors, and its design helps reduce wind impact, a key factor at that height. It can also be seen from dozens of miles away on clear days. The mobile game Send Me to Heaven consists of throwing your phone as high as you can into the air. The creator made it in the hope of destroying as many iPhones as possible, but Apple banned it from its App Store. Who would download that? 90% of the media in the United States, television, radio, and news, is owned by only 6 corporations, namely Disney, CBS, Viacom, News Corp, GE, and Time Warner. These are silky chickens, and they are well known for their calm and friendly temperament. Among the most docile poultry, silkies are considered an ideal pet. Aerogel, also known as frozen smoke, is one of the lowest density solids in the world, as it is composed of between 95 and 99% air. It is almost impossible to see or feel, yet it can support 4,000 times its own weight.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.